Hi, everyone. Hang with me for just a second. We'll do our normal checks. Looks like we are live on StreamYard, waiting on LinkedIn. And there it is. Let's see. There is our bald friend. And let's see if hey, there's some people, I believe, slowly showing up. Give me 1 second. We'll jump in, folks. Takes a minute. People are online, but the system doesn't show me who you are and what you're saying for just a moment. And I like to see it because it tells me that we're together. So just 1 sec. Somebody say hi and tell me where you are. I always love to hear exactly how many different countries, cities, states, how many people we got joining us. All right. Mr. Radford, how are you, sir? Good to see you. Just a second, I will start my weekly rant. All right, everybody, welcome. Say hi. There they are. Charlotte, George, Holly, here they come. Lisa, hey, Lisa, how are you? Deanna, how are you? Jill, what's going on? Nice to see you. Minnesota, I spent 7 years as a kid in Burnsville near Minneapolis. All right, hi, Mary. Lots of people. Today's talk, ladies and gentlemen, is about one of my favorite one of my favorite topics ever. That's creativity. Now, you have no reason to know this, but in my last career, when I earned an honest paycheck in the ivory tower doing the professor thing, my first love as an academician, as a scholar, really, was creativity. Employee creativity. Why do some people take those risks and others don't? And I really loved finding a university, Texas A&M University, who had professors multiple studying that thing in the business school, which is why I went there, and that's where I got my PhD. And it's the first area I started doing research and publishing research, and I've sat on the board of journals that study that topic, creativity, innovation, change, those related ideas. I've been fascinated with them ever since. And there's a few reasons that's true. One is that it's terribly important for the success of any team or organization. And this is the huge part and why it's worth having a session this week on this topic. And companies are often full of it more than they're serious when they talk about this topic. They know it's important, so they put it everywhere. Follow me. You've seen this. They put it on the website. They put it in the strategic report. They put it in the letter to shareholders. They say it in platitudes to the teams, et cetera, et cetera. There's no shortage of people saying creativity absolutely matters in our organization. In fact, it's essential. But then you ask yourself, okay, every single day, the typical manager where I work that I've seen over my career, how do they react when an employee or a group of employees engage creatively, speak up, share ideas, tweak a process, whatever the creative engagement might be? How do they react? What's the typical reaction? Now, I bet most of you know exactly what I know, which is that it's not awesome. It's not positive, supportive, and facilitative of even more creativity. No, it tends to be judgmental, risk averse, kind of scared of it, not hugely a fan of it. That's common. I like to say there's a creativity and innovation gap, a rhetoric gap. That is to say, between what we espouse and what we do every day, there's a big gap. I like to call it out. That's my job as an outsider, writer, speaker, coach guy. I want to say I'm calling bull. I think we talk about our love of creativity far more than we actually care about it with actions inside organizational life every day. So let me talk briefly about why it's important to you. What's in this for you? Why should you care? Well, we're constantly looking to become leaner and leaner and leaner, correct? Yes, which means you got to vie for attention more and more. You have to prove you can add value more and more. It used to be, follow me, it used to be that you could become a subject matter expert in some area, and that was like a high level of security for a long time in your career. Not true anymore. Now you got to do something even more. Creativity is the best answer I found so far. That is to say, do something that's not prescribed, but is value added that others can't do. A rare version of your skill set, a unique version of the skill set others don't have around you. That starts to approximate what I think of as creativity. If you got that, you're not perfectly secure. You are far more secure. How valuable is that? Look at everybody. Hey, Ronnie, how are you? Marcos, good to see you. Johnny, hey, Lori, how are you? Good to see you. Okay, back to creativity. There are plenty of myths about this topic. I already said the biggest, which is that most teams and most organizations are at least a little bit, sometimes a lot, full of it when they talk about it. They just think it sounds great, but the real work involved, the risks involved, the effort, the apprehension, it's more than they want to deal with, and so they shun it more than they'd ever want you to know. Great teams, the most high-performing, long-term, self-sustaining, really innovative organizations, they get this, and they also know you will break a few eggs to make an omelet. You will learn, and learning is awkward before it's awesome. Let me say that again. Learning is awkward before it's awesome, but you can't avoid that if creative movement forward is the goal. It's just inescapable. So let's talk about how we might build some more comfort doing that. But you know what? You got some obstacles in the way before we do that, which is a lot of these myths that float around about creativity. Let me give you just a couple that I want you to get rid of so you can clear your mind and think more productively about what it means to be creative as a professional. The first is that discipline, rigor, and routines are negative. Now, I'm going to talk about routines in just a few minutes, but the truth is, being very disciplined, following a schedule, and having a rigorous approach to your day is not a creativity killer. Follow me. You have to become at a certain level an expert. That is to say, you have to have a well of stuff from which you can pull to combine things and come up with creative solutions. That means you need discipline and rigor to amass plenty of expertise. The key, and this is huge, the key is remembering to get out of the rigor and routines to occasionally, small bits at a time, small bits, that's all we're asking for here, to not worry about the routines, the rigor, the rules, and instead to ask creative questions such as, I know what we're doing is making sense, and according to the current standards and metrics, I'm doing okay. But what can we fundamentally do different to accomplish our goals? Hey, are these even the right goals? Creative thought. Is there new room for mapping out how we do what we do and why we're doing it and where we're going? You have to break free of the structures that otherwise give you great clarity and efficiency every day to make sure to ask those types of creative questions. If you don't create that space and ask those questions, you won't have the insights everyone claims that they want in terms of creativity. Here's another myth. 10,000 hours. Have you heard this one? I bet you many of you have. You got to have a gob of experience before you're just this fluent, awesome, creative professional. Yes and no. And speaking as a person with a lot of hours doing what I do, there is huge benefit, and it relates to what I just said. The benefit to 10,000 hours, whether you're trying to be a chess master, a world-class writer, coach, whatever it is you're trying to be very creative at as a professional, the truth is you need that expertise. But when you try to be creative, almost by definition, you're ignorant. Follow me. What I mean is you're getting into an area you've not been. You're saying something, suggesting something about an extension of what you've done before, not something you've already done. That's creativity. And by definition, that means you're kind of ignorant. And I'm here to tell you, even if you don't have the 10,000 hours, that is okay. Because although expertise is a beautiful, basically essential foundation for creativity, the truth is that ignorance is hugely useful, because you haven't learned all the things that might become, without you expecting it, they might become cognitive constraints. That's correct. Lots of experts are great at being experts as long as they're doing what was required of them yesterday. But if you ask them to deviate from the script and create something new and better and different, not following the script for tomorrow, they often struggle because they're so used to saying, I have the answers. Well, now we're saying, what are new answers you've not given before? Ignorance actually helps that a little bit. It really does. And that's why I always have tangential or related comments in these rants. Listen, that's why I believe strongly, and you should care a lot about this one. Ready? I believe strongly we have undervalued the contribution or the potential contribution of young professionals in our organizations. It usually goes like this. You've probably had this happen to you. I've had this happen to me for sure. You're young, you're educated, you're excited, you're in a conversation, and you've got something to say. It sounds creative. It's not about how we've always done it. It's about something new. And so you speak up. And then someone more gray than you, I'm looking a little gray today, aren't I? Someone more gray than you looks at you and says, maybe, but I think you're not quite as informed as you want to be. You need a little more seasoning before you're ready to suggest something so interesting and or risky. Have you ever heard the seasoning comment before? Ooh, that one, by the way, even when it's true, accurate, and necessary, is never helpful. For anyone senior listening to me right now, even if you're right, it's not helpful. When you look at young talent and you think about creativity, their energy and their ignorance tend to be, my observation as a professional in this area, tend to be very undervalued assets we don't tap into. It is because of the energy combined with the ignorance or lack of experience, I should say, that make them able to leap cognitively to places it's more difficult for many professionals to leap to. You following me? I love this topic. Denise Statmer, how are you? Rodica, hello, how are you? Sammy, good to see you. Yusuf, what's happening? Lots of people coming in. Man, as usual, we have a broad geography, a broad demographic. I love that. I think that's not just about me. That's about this topic, actually. This topic is widely relevant to your organizations, into your career. So one more myth at least. A lot of people, when they think about creativity, think about IQ. Now, I'm sensitive to that a little bit. I went into a business where you have to be fairly bright as a ivory tower person, an academic. IQ is not that good, or I could have gotten that word correct the first time. Back when I was a professor, everyone liked to compare themselves in terms of IQ. And I have to tell you something. IQ, just like experience, which is a different but related idea, is terribly important and very often overrated. What? Are you kidding me? No, it's actually quite overrated. It becomes a strange stumbling block, much like success can be useful, but ultimately a trap that people fall into. IQ is the same way. If you've ever met someone who's used to being correct, and not necessarily a know-it-all, we've all known them, don't name them by name. We know them, they're not pleasant. But if you know someone who's often correct, often among the smartest in the room, they stop questioning themselves as much. They're preoccupied with the simple idea that they comprehend more completely what others are trying to struggle to comprehend, and they thus fail because they strangely get lost in an evaluative situation with others around them because they care about IQ and who understands the most, which is weird if you think about it. It's a downside of IQ in my experience. They stop then trying to make the creative leaps. They're not focused on it enough, which is very, very strange. So IQ is absolutely helpful, but only up to a certain level. At really high levels, it can be just as much of a hindrance as it is a help. So think about that. All right, so how would I encourage you to think about this topic if those myths aren't terribly, terribly helpful? Well, let's get there in just one second. Hey, James. Jill says, seeking perspectives from a source outside of your sphere can be so extremely insightful. I couldn't possibly agree more. When I see a couple comments I need to throw in there, I'm going to throw them in there. That's a good one. Whether it's due to IQ or your recognition of the need just to be open in general, getting outside of what you're thinking and encouraging others to throw in related or unrelated thoughts stimulates new thoughts in you. That's how creativity works. So we have to be more open to that, not less, in conversation and in group settings. I absolutely love validating that. Maria, how are you? We got all kinds of people showing up. So what's my advice? My advice is to adopt a framework that back in my dorky ivory tower days, we would call the social psychology of creativity. Basically, what I mean is to remember this. You're not trying to be a creative genius. As a manager, you're not trying to find or hire creative geniuses. Those are basically unicorns. Stop chasing unicorns. What you want to remember is that every single one of us has a creative contribution to make. I'm not saying that because of some idealist platitude either. I'm being honest here. all of us have some creative capacity. Think of it this way. This is what a professor named Teresa Amambly and many of her collaborators and other scholars showed us back in the day, maybe 30 years ago, that really at the time was a revolution. This is what they showed us. Everyone goes to work every day with this much creative capacity, okay? Creative capacity right there, whatever that amount might be. But the truth is, at work, because of all the risks we perceive, the imperfect relationships, the lack of good management, asking for creativity, and other apprehensions we take to work every day, we perform here. That is to say, there's a gap between what we're capable of creatively, right? And where we perform every day because we don't see it as worth it, we see it as too risky. That gap is your problem, both as an individual and as a team and as an organization. That gap between your general capacity you built up, you were given at birth and then built on a little bit as you developed as a young person, the gap between that ability and where you actually perform creatively, that gap is everything. So what do you do? First, let's talk about you as an individual. Just a couple of great punchlines we know from research and practice will help you. And then what you can do as a professional or as a leader for the teams that you influence and manage. A couple punchlines there as well. So before I jump in, I will look back over here. Hey, some of you show up by name, which is lovely. Some of you show up as LinkedIn user, and I don't know why you show up as LinkedIn user, but you do. Don't forget, in a few minutes, as hard as it is to imagine, I will stop ranting and try and answer your questions. I've already gotten a couple. If you have a question, feel free to put it in there. And don't forget, when we're done, by the way, I love to hear from you. If you'd like to talk offline, just send me a message on LinkedIn, if that's what you like, or drop me an email, todd@drdoit.com. I'd love to hear your question and give you a quick response. So let's think about you and then the team, shall we? First, I'm going to give you 3 rapid takeaways that, I'm being straight up here, in a practical, real sense, will help you close that gap and demonstrate, engage, actually enact more creativity. I want you to feed your head. I want you to shake up routines. I want you to embrace learning. Feed your head. You can't just say, I'm done with school. I'm done learning now. Doesn't work. Feels good for 2 weeks to get rid of that headache from all that stress and all that studying, but you should be. It's not a joke. It's been a cliche for too long, and cliches scare me because then people ignore them when they're helpful. They even ignore them. Continuous learning. Good news for you. Being a continuous learner who feeds their head is far easier today than it's ever been. You have a million people like me ranting out here, sharing information on live streams. You've got blogs, you've got podcasts, you've got books, you got coaches and mentors and internal training and workshops and university courses. I could go on and on. If you want to feed your brain, which is a beautiful stimulant to new connections of ideas that feeds creativity, it's easy, low cost, very often free to do so. No excuses. Feed your brain. Number 2, shake up routines. A little while ago, I said, sure, brutal discipline and scheduling and structures, those things are mythically anti-creativity. Well, not really, because you do have to carve out places where you can be creative or try to be more creative in your decision-making as you think about personnel around you, the processes around you, etc. But the truth is, if we overindulge, yes, there can be a negative impact of really following routines, to the point that routines are not just efficiency givers every day, but they are in fact ruts. I'll challenge you real quick. Think about your routine you follow every day, and I bet you it'll depress you in a hot second. You get up every day and you hit the alarm, the exact same number of times you hit that alarm every day, okay? Then you just follow the script. You don't even think consciously. We do so much every day, subconsciously, completely on autopilot. That's the power of a routine, but sometimes it becomes a rut. And so you wear the same thing almost every Monday. Yeah, you drive the same route to work every day, same station, same music, playing in the car. You get to work, the order of tasks is the same every day, meeting scheduled same time, same room. You go to that big meeting you have every Monday. Where do you sit? Same spot. Time for lunch. Great. Who do you go with? Same people. Where do you go? Same place. What do you eat? Same thing. Are you depressed yet? You probably should be, because many times for busy people, Our routines that guide us, which is useful, go too far, become too ingrained, and become ruts. That clouds any excess little bits of space that you need for creative thought. And so my advice to you is listen up. You better shake up those routines. Just once a quarter, simple basic advice you can remember. Ready? Just once a quarter, I want you to think about one or two of those professional routines you can intentionally mess with, because here's what happens. When you choose the new route to work, wear that weird shirt you haven't worn for 2 years, schedule things differently, eat with a different crew, eat a different thing, etc. One or two of those, see how it feels for a week. What we know as management specialists, psychologists, cognitive people, what we know is that it impacts your brain in an interesting way, and you switch out of autopilot and become a little more conscious. And when you're conscious, you don't follow the scripts. And when that's true, the likelihood of novel combinations of stuff, creativity, goes up. And it didn't cost you a dime. You just had to shake things up and let the brain feel a little bit more free. So number one, I would say, feed your head. Number two, shake up routines. Number three, embrace learning. Now, what I mean by that is not look at all the sources. I talked about feeding your brain. What I mean about that is choose, and this will take time, but you can do it. Choose to value learning. Why? Because as I said earlier, it's awkward before it's awesome. You will, to use a cliche, here we go, break a few eggs to make an omelet. That's normal. That's good. Great leaders make the team aware that it's okay to get messy in the kitchen. They make teams aware that any small breakthrough or big breakthrough, a new way we deal with a client, a new process tweak internally, a new potential product, service, technology, or business model. These things do not poof, arrive in an instant. No, they arrive slowly, sometimes painfully, over a period of time that is often awkward before it's awesome. That is learning. It is the underpinning of real growth and creativity and change and innovation. So you've got to do that for yourself, and then start through supportive comments and validating behaviors to do that for others. So that's for you. Let's turn to your team for just a second. If you are a formal leader and you care about this topic of creativity, and you know it's the only way that all of you are going to stay relevant, promotable, better than artificial intelligence that is trying to get rid of you, then listen to me. You're going to model it, ask for it, support it, and evaluate for it. Let me say that again. Model it. That starts with you. If you're in a formal position of leadership, everything starts with you. They look to you and learn vicariously, even if you're not talking directly to them. That's the nature of living in glass houses. Listen, use that to your advantage. And don't forget the awkward before awesome nature of learning, because when it happens to you, as you try to stretch, grow, build skills, and be more creative at work, when it hurts and when you learn that something doesn't quite work, before you take a step forward and make it work, tell them about it. Laugh at yourself. Share the learning moment. That humanizes learning. That humanizes you. That makes them more willing to embrace the risks associated with, the awkwardness associated with creativity. What's that worth? It's priceless, and it doesn't cost you a dime. Ask for it. Use words informally. Finally, I want you to support it when you see it in others. That is to say, let's be very specific here. Every idea you hear won't be awesome. You know this, and it's going to always be that way. So what? Never respond with quick judgment, quick stopping of their thinking, quick evaluative things that make them go, they didn't like my idea, and they're not listening, and they've moved on. You have to find a way not to say great idea, because it may or may not be a great idea. You have to find a way to validate their engagement in the awkward before awesome process of learning that supports creativity. So I'm not sure I understand, John. Could you explain that some more? Help me understand. Now I've said nothing negative, but I've validated and I've asked them for input. There's a million versions of that allow you to respond in a way that facilitates continued engagement instead of shutting people down. One of the core behaviors I see all the time is that well-intentioned, smart leaders unintentionally shut people down. They're not trying to, but they're not supportive at all. They're simplistically curt, honest. I love candor, but sometimes, I'm saying it, sometimes candor can be not so useful. I love it. We need more of it. But sometimes it's a problem, such as this. We've tried that before. It won't work. It's going to be too expensive. I'm not sure you thought that through. If that's your first quick reaction, you might be honest. You might be showing some good use of candor, some honest use of candor. You're not being helpful, not if creativity in a decision-making context is part of what you're chasing. You have to validate their participation to encourage more. That is how you make it okay to stay with the awkward before awesome nature of learning. You also have to evaluate for it. And I love this one. You ready? You have to hire for it. Oh yeah, you can do that. There are multiple pieces to this puzzle, and you have to hire for it. You can't just say, look where they went to school. I see evidence that suggests IQ. I like that personality. That probably make me feel okay, if not happy every day. Those are sometimes useful things to think. You also want to talk about and have them talk about creativity and what it means. You want them to demonstrate it, if you can, by talking through things you see on that resume or on their website or on their socials. You want to give them hypotheticals to talk about or actual work, depending on the nature of what you're hiring, to watch them attempt to engage it live with you. These are all different ways that hiring managers or hiring teams can have people talk about and engage creativity, so that is one of the multiple factors we're filtering on that we care about when we're hiring. It's not one simple answer. Creativity is about you trying to be the best version of yourself you can be, and I gave you some good advice there. It's about then you doing that for others. And if you're in a leadership role, it's also about asking for it and modeling it and evaluating for it when it comes time for performance evaluations, and even making sure it's a part of your process for hiring as well. Rant is over. Time for a quick Q&A. All right. Thank you, Jill. I appreciate that. Tennis ball. Hey, Ronnie. I used to make MBA students do a lot of interesting things. He remembers juggling some tennis balls. We had a lot of fun, did we not? Oh, all right. Mary sends me this question. Mary says, many times I have creative thoughts, it's spontaneous, but by the time I get to share them with the right people, I've lost focus on that idea or enthusiasm for that idea, and I don't know what to do with it. And I start to second guess myself. What should I do? Here's what you should do. You should have a mechanism with you all the time that allows you to record your ideas. I do this. Let me speak to myself just as a writer. For example, I have ideas left and right all the time, and I capture them. Audio notes on my phone, written notes that I dictate on my phone. Sometimes I write them down if I'm able to. I have one of those methods of capture all the time, and so should you. Now, what you're going to find over time as you start to do this with ideas about your career and your job is that not all of them are of equal importance. And it'll make you question yourself, and that's okay. But you will find a certain number of them that you're so happy you saved, instead of allowing to disappear quickly as they hit your brain. Don't do that. Capture them is my first bit of advice. The second one is, after you capture them and find, say, each week or month, the one or two, man, you're glad you held on to, you got to find a way to keep that idea alive. And that means you have to go share it. So even if you got in the meeting 10 minutes later and lost interest or confidence and didn't bring it up, you've captured it now that we've talked about that. And you're going to find the time. Maybe it's not that meeting. Maybe it's later with a subset of people, or even one person with whom you need to have this conversation, to flush it out just a little bit, to check your confidence and check the quality of your idea. Give it that chance. That's how you partially validate that idea. And then I say to you formal leaders out there, you've got to facilitate this happening. I mean, all of you as individuals can do what I just said. But as formal leaders, there should be, say, once a quarter on a team basis, some meetings where we're not going to do the business of the day. We're not going to do all that stuff we normally do. No, we're going to say, how can we do what we do differently? Everyone bring your best one idea that maybe you've captured recently. Let's spitball. Let's talk. Let's see which small number of them maybe do in fact stick against the wall, and as a team, we should take more seriously moving forward. Those are different ways. You're always trying to come at an idea from multiple angles. Those are different ways that you can address that question, Mary, and make sure you give your ideas the hope, the chance that they need, because each one of them starts off weak and struggling like a little seed and needs some water, needs some sunshine, needs some attention and support. And your job is to give it to yourself. And if you're a leader, your job is to give it to others as well. We have, quicker than I ever can imagine, arrived at the end of another stream. Before you leave, I'll say the obvious. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you being here. It's great to see all these names and comments. If I did not get to you, I apologize. Send me a note. I want to connect with you on LinkedIn. I'd be very happy to offer you my quick take on whatever your question might be about this topic today, creativity or leadership and careers in general. I've got all kinds of work that'll be coming your way, new books, courses. You'll see them online. As they come to fruition, you'll see me talking about them. Thanks again for being here. I hope you are well. I'll see you next time. Bye.